it has to be built on trust. It has a direct link to our success as a company.
When we talk partnerships, we talk about added value to both sides of the table. What value can we bring? What value can our partner bring?
In my mind, partnerships to Indigenous people means working in a very respectful way together with targets, of course, and always honoring the culture.
If you look back at partnerships between Indigenous peoples and, say, the governments, they were in the form of treaties. So partnerships have a history of being sacred.
Hi, I'm Kelly Lindsay, President and CEO of Indigenous Works. Our not-for-profit organization has spent the last 20 years working with Indigenous people, businesses, and communities. Welcome to our video about building successful Indigenous, non-Indigenous partnerships. Our recent national partnership study showed that Indigenous and non-Indigenous partnerships are not overly successful. We'll talk about partnerships using a framework we've developed. In this program, we're going to take you through each of the 7 stages, looking at the organizational strategies and practices you need to master along the way. We'll look at this from both an Indigenous and non-Indigenous perspective. We're going to see that the road to successful partnerships requires a tremendous amount of careful planning, thought, strategy, and execution. Stage 1, partnerless. At this stage, a culture of partnership is not yet developed in the company or organization. Partnership competencies in a business case have not been built. No real analysis has been completed to assess whether partnering is even the right approach for the company or organization. At the very beginning of your journey, there may not be a full understanding or even agreement within your business or organization about the underlying purposes of partnership. The benefits of partnership could include growing market share, diversifying products or service offers, sourcing talent, combining intelligence and information, or research and development. These are all good reasons to partner. But you may be in a work environment which has not been inclined to partner. I don't mean just partnerships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous organizations. I mean that you may lack a culture of partnership in your organization.
Well, there's a huge difference. There's no doubt about that. I find that in Indigenous organizations, you're just kind of living it, right? It's who you are. You already are identifying and working within an Indigenous culture for the most part. I've worked in Indigenous communities and organizations, and now I also work in the corporate world. And there is a huge difference in terms of how the approach on relationships and partnerships are viewed. I find that the Indigenous communities are still struggling on what that means to partner with, whether it's with neighboring nations or even far away, whether it's a whole nother province over a whole different territory.
In business, there are words that do not express what a partnership might mean, and you can't take that Indigenous language and translate it.
English is the dominant language, and so to be honest, that's probably not top of mind. That's a learning for us probably to make sure that we are speaking the same language to an extent so both parties understand what the goals are. Certainly language barrier can be an issue, and we see that in other parts of our business where we maybe have a large Spanish-speaking component, for example, in our workforce in the United States. If you're getting off on the wrong foot in terms of definition of what a partnership is, or not understanding what the goals are, then you're setting yourself up for failure.
Stage 2, visioning. This stage is about identifying internal and external risks to achieving your business plan and making a deliberate assessment about the role and opportunity for partnerships in overcoming those risks. This stage is about assessing what gaps there are in your business plan and whether a partnership is the way to address or fill those gaps. As a first step, you need to build a profile of an ideal partner. This can be a complex process because there are lots of strategy considerations, and of course, there are cultural considerations. Follow these steps. 1. Assess whether and how the partner profile will address the gaps your assessment has identified. Number 2. Do you know some of the potential companies or organizations that fit the profile you have developed? Your strategic consideration as a non-Indigenous company is whether your ideal partner profile may have an Indigenous advantage. Likewise, if you are an Indigenous organization, there may be some considerations in choosing a non-Indigenous partner.
So what does your corporate office look like? What are your corporate values, your structures? What are you willing to bring to the table, and how much can we trust each other that this relationship is actually going to last?
If I was looking to partner with a non-Indigenous company, I think that some of the key things that I would look for is that they are consistent and stable financially, and also that they have a good brand. I would like to look at their history and see what their values are and make sure that they align with mine. Because I don't believe that a partnership would be successful if you don't have the same values.
The Indigenous partner brings an added value of their own intelligence to the market itself, an intelligence of that socioeconomic piece, whether it be regulatory, environmental, employment, a lot of different facets of it. And that just coincides with us as a company to take that value and bring it together as one and carry it forward.
From a corporate perspective, because of Supreme Court case rulings, there's a requirement to accommodate with nations when you're going out and doing business. If you get involved with the community at the front end, at the right when you know there's going to be some work, or even before then, you have an opportunity to develop a really deep relationship. And that relationship translates into being better positioned to win work. We invest a lot of time in trying to recruit local. And we find that we have way more success, number one, because it keeps your costs down. You're not bringing in people from out of town. And number two, you're actually seeing the money going back into the community. And you see a shift in the people's attitudes and the way they their self-pride. If they're working, they're making money, they're able to look after their family. And the other piece that we find is also from a supply chain perspective, where we will work with the nations on working with their local entrepreneurs for business opportunity. They can do snow clearing, they can do security, site preparation if they have the capacity, or we can help them incubate to get that capacity. And the community sees you as a company that's saying what you're going to do, and that's so important.
Stage 3, partnership readiness. What does partnership readiness mean to you? At this stage, you're starting to look inside your business or organization to determine if you are ready to partner. Are you developing the strategies and organizational competencies you need to build high-functioning, authentic, and long-term partnerships? Here are just 3 examples of strategies. Whether you're a non-Indigenous business or an Indigenous organization, partnership readiness is critical. Companies or organizations that do their homework to prepare the way for partnership will be better partners in the long run. The ability to source the right partner depends on knowing what that partner can do for you in terms of adding value, but you need to bring value to your partner. Often, we have seen businesses or organizations experience bumpy patches in their partnership. And so, this stage in your journey is important, as it establishes the principles and reasons why the partnership was needed in the first place. If something goes wrong later, it can be helpful to return to the basics.
When a company wants to approach a community, they need to ask what the community needs and not what the company needs. Because sometimes a company will go in with its needs only and thinking that they're going in with a gift and they're going to give this community this. Maybe the community doesn't need that.
You'd want to take those learnings from that partnership that didn't go so well and try and add those with the new way of partnering, I guess you could say, or taking an approach that is successful and taking it forward. Communication is probably the biggest key. And how you can carry that forward is just communication amongst all and making sure that the trust factor is there as well.
If the company is not approaching the relationship properly, if they're going in just thinking they can sign a deal, get the signature of the local leadership, and then move on, you're not going to have a relationship. People are going to get upset. You're going to lose your credibility. And in some cases, worst case scenarios, you could literally face being thrown out of the region. From a community perspective, what I've seen in the past too is a lot of times there's internal turmoil within the leadership, and that has a real negative impact for the communities to be able to participate in the economic opportunities. Where I've seen the success is communities that have, number one, a solid governance structure, and they have the ability to separate out a corporate entity and the governance structure. There's still an accountability piece, but if they can have that type of separation, I find that for the most part, you find a lot more success in getting some of the work and seeing the benefits in the communities.
Stage 4, prospect identification. In the fourth stage, prospect identification, active marketing is needed, an attraction strategy to pull potential partners to you. Now that you're looking for a partner, it's time to identify the specific tools you will use in your partner search. What strategy will you be using to search for and identify partner prospects to determine a match? There are different ways of building your attraction strategy.
If the moment you're coming to the table is because you've identified an opportunity or an initiative you want to be part of, and then the relationship is second, that immediately brings into question, are you really interested in the relationship? It goes back to that right fit. And the right fit we look for with all clients, be they Indigenous or otherwise, is, I guess, openness to advice, openness to having a real dialogue and conversation, wanting a relationship. And I think it's humility on both parts. You know, I always say with any client, I need to learn about your business, what you're looking to achieve. I don't know those things, and those are the broader goals. So I have to come with the humility of not knowing, and at the same time, you hope the client has the humility of what they don't know in terms of banking, in terms of business sophistication.
Well, to me, I see that as a question on two sides. From the corporate side, what I feel is important for them to know is to do their research about the organization they want to approach, especially if it's an Indigenous one. We are in continuous seeking employer partnerships. So if any of them were to approach us, I would expect them to have done some research on our organization. We have a website, we have a Facebook, and to know what we're all about first and what our mission and mandates and visions, objectives are. That way it would provide a better conversation of the genuine interest that they are taking an investment into our organization. That's what I would like to see.
Stage 5, engagement. This is the part that we formally call the engagement stage. It's when you are actively meeting partner prospects and conducting formal or informal interviews. In these meetings, you are trying to suss out whether the people you are meeting represent businesses or organizations that will make great partners. At the same time, you're also trying to create the right impression while also laying out what you can do to bring value to a partner prospect.
What I'm starting to see now is Indigenous organizations and corporations, for example, that have the ability to self-perform the work, and they're going outside their traditional territories to look for opportunity, but they're struggling on how do they go form another partnership with another nation. From a corporate perspective, then it's the different lens, because they look at partnerships as the bottom line. What is the value, and how do we measure the financial well-being of our corporation? So getting their head wrapped around and making sure that the corporation can understand that language and the importance of the value of the relationship has to be translated through financial means.
Stage 6, relationship building. There are 3 characteristics in this stage which are really important. Building trust as a basis for the relationship. In all our discussions with Indigenous organizations, this keeps coming up as the number 1 issue. Fundamentally, trust means something different in a corporate versus an Indigenous community context. You need to affirm and align the values between your organization or business and those of your prospective partner. A values-based approach to partnership strives for mutuality, reciprocity, and transparency. Will your business be ready to support and sustain the partnership you will soon be formalizing? Have you developed the policy and strategy foundations needed to support a potential partnership? This readiness needs to be conveyed to your prospective partner. You also need to be convinced that your prospective partner has done their homework.
If there's no open dialogue between the parties, there's a lot of room for misinterpretation.
Indigenous groups are more thoughtful, shall we say, in some ways. They take a longer term approach, which actually matches well with what we try to promote as a bank. A lot of private groups are very transactional. They want to do it and they want to do it now. To build real relationships, you have to take your time. You have to make sure you're actually understanding one another and the mutual benefits, the mutual responsibilities, and that takes investment.
Stage 7, authentic partnerships. This takes us to the 7th and final stage 7, authentic partnerships. Strong leadership needs to play an effective role in the partnership. Senior leadership has a responsibility to ensure that the business or organizations establishes the policies and strategies needed to build and support partnerships. Partnerships require an enterprise-wide approach, meaning that every employee has a role to play in making it successful. Weak links within the company or organization can inadvertently undermine a partnership very quickly. Make sure everyone on staff knows their role and understands their responsibilities and accountabilities, and that they have the appropriate level of resources to uphold them. Good partnerships require a high level of communication, coordination, and reporting.
There's lots of things that I would suggest that should be part of, a set of guidelines in terms of establishing a relationship or a partnership between Indigenous and non-Indigenous parties. But I think the number 1 rule would be this overriding respect for the other person and recognizing that while their interests may not be the same as yours, they're very important to them. And so recognize that importance and embrace it instead of being cagey about it or whatever. Embrace those differences, and then the partnership will just automatically start to develop.
If you take learnings from it, one learning, if you've taken a learning from everything you've done, you'll be successful.
Thanks for listening today. We hope that the information in this learning video will help you in your work. Use our partner model to understand the competencies that you and your staff need to develop in order to successfully navigate the journey toward partnership. You and your business or organization will find that successful partnerships can help you. It takes work and dedication, but the returns are there for those who put in the effort.